Today I'm going to look at this new E-Flite Cirrus SR22T. I mean, this has been available in a blue version, but now E-Flite has actually upgraded this one, so it does feature an AR637T receiver and also an Avian EC, so it's fully featured when it comes to the latest telemetry and you know, safe and AS3X and such things. It's also a really beautiful model with the wing lights. Lots of details like these antennas, which you can also remove, and a three-bladed prop. It's just beautiful, so let's get this one up in there and fly it. So this is about flight number 4 I've done on the Cirrus SR22T. So I haven't adjusted anything. It was just correct out of the box. Just had to align the nose gear when I set the RC airplane up. And I did actually use the same like TX setup I have for my Cherokee, but then I changed the flap to elevator mix, and I just neutralized all the trims, so it was a really easy TX setup. And so far what I discovered about this Cirrus, then it just excels at slow flying. It's a really beautiful looking RC airplane, and even when it is quite bright as now, you can make up the LED lights. I think it's difficult for the camera to actually see the cabin light, but it's all really beautiful. And when you do like these really soft with almost no throttle landings, the landings are really smooth. You can experience some bouncing if you have a little bit of a steep angle of attack when you land. This is just a agile RC airplane without being overly agile on the roll axis. This kind of a, just trying to do a knife edge circle, so it will do it. The great thing about most E-Flite RC airplanes is that they are rarely over controlled, and they do not get squirrely when you fly them, and it's the same for this Cirrus. Can go quite aggressively on the flaps, and you don't notice any ballooning whatsoever. Of course, I've done the according to manual flap to elevator mix. And I have no wind today, so of course it's really easy to fly slow with flaps. So I will certainly do more windy flights further on, but today I'm thankful for not having any wind when I'm doing the maiden flights. So let's do another landing. Just kill the throttle, let it glide. Be prepared with a little bit of power, a flare at the end. And I mean, if you do it gentle, I think 3 points landing just works great. Otherwise, I think just a bit of flare, so you land on the mains, is also a good way to land. And instead of having the ESC alarm being triggered with a series of beeps, I've set it up to do voice these days. So the only beep alarm I get is when I have an imbalance between the cells, which happens sometimes. I mean, this is a really easy landing RS airplane. You don't need much power. You don't need to worry too much if it will stall. You can just kill the power, let it drop, flare at the end just a little bit.
Time remaining 1 minute.
As you can see, when you just step on the throttle, it's really easy to get off the ground. There's a little bit of a sticky lawn today due to morning mist as usual on this location. And some RC airplanes are just, really difficult to get off the air when the grass is sticky, but this Cirrus doesn't appear to have any problem with the sticky grass. Timer is almost up, so it's time to do the final landing. So the same technique as before, just kill the throttle, let it drop, a little bit of power, a little bit of flare, and you level it off in a good way.
10, 9, 8.
When you do a maiden flight, you never know what to expect. But I mean, E-Flite RC planes in this size these days, they are just, in my experience, just sort of fantastic out of the box when you fly them. And this is a great slow flying RC airplane. You might not think that it would be because kind of a narrow wing chord, but it's just fantastic. It just glides and fly with the full flaps without ballooning according to the manual settings. So it's just overall a great flying RC airplane. I would say that it's not really snappy roll rate on this SR22T then. So I think actually the Cherokee is a little bit quicker than this RC airplane. And when it's about to land this SR22T then, I did actually botch a couple of the first landings because I had too much speed and a kind of steep angle of attack when I landed. So it just bounced. So in my experience then, you should actually just more or less just kill the throttle, let the plane drop by itself and then flare at the end. And then you will avoid any bouncing and just have a really great and nice landing. So I mean, it's just a fantastic flying RC airplane. And it's also really easy to put the battery in because you have like this battery tray, and I just put the 4S battery right on top of this one, 2200 milliamp smart battery, and it was all balanced according to the CG markers over here. And even if I had like a 3S battery, I just moved it a little bit tad forward and it was all balanced. So I mean, it's just a great flying RC airplane with the carbon fiber rods inside to reinforce it, and you also have the Avian EC 60 amp EC over here. A little bit odd decision when it comes to cabling on this RC airplane is that the elevator and rudder cables actually run on top of the battery tray, which I think it's a really odd decision when you can actually just have them underneath. But other than that, I think it's just really easy to put the battery in and to operate this RC airplane. So I will just show you a quick build of this RC airplane so you can see for yourself that it's really easy to put together. The first thing on assembly is to slide in these main gear parts and then use 2 Phillip head screws and use an appropriate screwdriver to secure them. For the next step then you have to remove the canopy piece and also the front section. You just slide forward and lift up, and then you can access the servo horn for the rudder. And this nose gear then, you just slide it in the hole all the way, just a little bit gently. Then on the other side, just under the cowl piece, you have to rud this nose gear horn, so it has to be fitted on to the C-bend. So just keep on doing it with a bit of persistence and you will eventually get it right. And then on the nose gear pin, then you put the horn all the way down, and you align nose gear and also the horn, and now it's ready to secure with the Phillips head screw. Then you have the tail section, so these two halves then have to put in place. You have a rather long carbon fiber spar inside. Just make sure that these two connect, and then of course you have to attach this linkage to the control surface horn. So according to the manual, you should use the most inner hole of these three. Just put it in and then use this plastic holder and just squeeze it so it will snap in place. To secure these two wing halves, you have two small 10mm screws. And then you need to use a smaller screwdriver just to be able to screw these two in. I would be a little bit careful just to not over tighten these, as the plastic might break, so just make them go all the way down just to avoid the wing halves slipping off. And when you're done, just make a quick check that the half is actually secured. As for the main wing, then you have the wing spar, which is put in first, and the wing half just slides onto this spar, and align these pins and shove it all the way in. Must make sure that you have a good connection, because these are the servo connectors then for the ailerons and for the flaps. And when it's time to screw this in, I discovered that you really have to push the wing half towards the fuselage just to have the screw aligning with the plastic holes as well. This bottom hatch then does have an antenna which you attach, and it works like a handle when you're about to open this hatch, and underneath the hatch you actually have access to the servos for the elevator and the rudder. When you're done, you just put this back on the fuse. You have additional things like these steps, which you also use screws to put in, but I usually leave them in the plastic bag. Also on top you have this antenna. I think these are great looking scale details, but in experience I have broken these antennas when I transport the RC airplane, so usually I try to avoid to mount too many scale details on my RC airplanes. On the rear fin then you have this antenna piece. You have to turn the rudder and then put this one in between the foam pieces, and you also use a screw to secure this plastic piece. I think these are really great looking scaled details which make this SR22T just fantastic looking. So on the front then you have this foam cover. You should always wait to assemble the prop until you've done TX setup. And this prop adapter, I believe, and the prop is about the same or almost exactly the same as on the Turbo Timber Revolution and also on the Air Tractor. So it's a really common used type. Just secure this one and not over tighten, just make it tight enough so you don't break the rather thin metallic in these prop adapters. And the spinner put on, and there's a screw in the center just to secure it. I think you could use and interchange this prop adapter and spinner with the Turbo Timber Revolution and the Air Tractor also. The last thing you have to do is to align the nose gear and the rudder, and you open the bottom hatch and unscrew this side, and then you just align these two, the nose gear and the rudder, and when they are aligned you secure it. And you can certainly do this with your TX connected as well, but I discovered that most E-Flite RC planes, they are really well set up from the box. What is my final verdict of this SR22T then? I think it's just a fantastic flying RC airplane. As you saw in the build, there are really not too many difficult steps. I think maybe the most difficult is just to fit the servo horn or the rudder horn for the nose gear. But other than that, I mean, it's just a really simple build. It's a little bit more complicated than to put together the Cherokee, in my opinion. But I mean, they are very similar with the quick connectors inside the wing also. So I mean, there is no cabling to be messing around with. As this is such a beautiful RC airplane and so featured with LED lights, with flaps, it flies so fantastic. This plane is actually on my list of all my RC airplanes that I've flown. It came in the 4th place just right out after the maiden round of flights, because I discovered that this plane, I mean, it handles so fantastic in the air, and it can even do a little bit of longer grass. So I mean, it's just a fantastic play in all regards, this E-Flite SR22T.